Hello everybody and welcome to a video I am very excited about. Today I am joined by Axolotl, the designer of the custom campaign Dark Matter. How's it going?
Hey everyone, I'm doing pretty well.
Awesome. So if you do not know about this campaign, I have a link to a spoiler-free review of it with some spoilers as well if you are interested. But I have a bunch of gameplay on this channel, but the quick elevator pitch for this is that this is a fantastic custom campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game, set in the distant future, in space. However, it works that in very elegantly, and it actually kind of like has a great explanation for why, Agnes Baker is there, is also the cheeky flavor reference to Granny Orn on the flavor text to one of the cards always makes me laugh. And it's really good, really tight, and I think it is one of the best custom campaigns out there, so you should check it out. However, if you've not played it yet, you're going to want to get away from this video because we're going to go in completely, this is like a spoiler-full discussion. We're going to be talking about like campaign from beginning to end and all the points as we just have a chat about it. So, Axolotl, the first thing I want to ask is, where did the inspiration for this campaign come from?
So, I've always loved sci-fi, right? So,
Mhm.
I think it's pretty obvious just from the idea of dark matter. Um, it was back in I think 2 summers ago after I made the Symphony of Eric Zan, which is a standalone.
Mhm.
I was looking at making something a bit larger, like a short campaign. I was trying to figure out the themes that could work for a short campaign, and having just played through Dream Eaters and falling in love with the search for Cutoff,
Mhm.
I realized that I wanted to make a campaign that felt in similar scope to the search of Cutoff, where you're exploring various locales and then figuring something out throughout a long period of time.
Nice.
So that's the scope I was looking to get to. But for it actually took quite a while for me to figure out that was going to be sci-fi because, as you've said, it's the idea of bringing how to bring the Arkham investigators into the future that was very troubling to me.
Yeah.
Like I needed a really good reason to bring them into the future for it to work for me, because I think the first thought everyone has when they like at dark matter is how would it make sense with the Arkham investigators? What investigators do I play? But
Honestly, for me, my first
yeah,
time when I played, I actually, yours was the first custom campaign I played.
yeah,
And I chose it just because. So what I did is I opened up all of the boxes and I looked at all the art for all of the cards that came out. And yours sold me on that. And I thought when I came to it, I was like, it's gonna be set in space. And I was like, there's not gonna be. I was like, I'm ready for this to just be Daisy Walker in space. And
yeah,
then as I was reading the intro, the prologue, which is just the prologue from Pat Carcosa. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah, and it's exactly the same.
And I was halfway through and I was like, wait a minute, this is just the Pats Carcosa intro. It's honestly, I love what you did with this. I think your solution, if it did take a long time, I think the solution is really clever. And it immediately played with my expectations coming into the campaign. Because I was like, oh, this is really neat. And then when I knew that I know that I'm big on Arkham lore, and Haster is my favorite
Yeah,
ancient one. So when I saw this Machine in Yellow, Fragment Carcosa, I was like, I'm in. Like, this is already pretty exciting. And then immediately, I think this does really good. It kind of like, it even fits into the idea that Carcosa had, which was, is this in the investigator's own head, or is this
yeah,
actually happening? And I think that's just really clever.
yeah. So Haster is also my favorite ancient one, which is I guess expected, but it it just made sense to me that how do you bring the Arkham investigators into the future is to make it so that you're not even sure if it's real or not.
Yeah, no, it's great.
If it's like the anachronisms can be explained by hallucinations, and
Yes.
then everything just fits.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, I also like the idea that when you think of a space campaign, it's not your immediate thought to make the ancient one Haster, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe it might be like Amigo Invasion or like Yogg-Sothoth or something. But I like the idea of like really playing with psychological horror even in a space setting.
Yeah,
Which is
definitely.
yeah.
And then also in the spoilers too, I do like that even then it kind of still brought a surprise when Haster. It's like it ends up being Tasilda that comes
Yeah.
into the whole thing. I think that's another. There's you said in our Discord channel that the blind playthrough is what you designed for, and I think the blind playthrough of this campaign is incredible. I'm playing it right now with Lyle on our channel, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting to watch him be like, "Wow!" and all this is happening because I think the blind playthrough is just absolutely, it's one of the best. So I think like you've done a really good job at like getting all these story beats, and then like even as it twists and turns, it's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, definitely. I'll repeat what I said on the Discord, but basically when I play Arkham, I don't replay campaigns often. My favorite moments of Arkham in general is the blind playthrough, so it like leaks into my design mentality to make it so that's why Dark Matter is best played blind. Yeah.
And you also, I remember this was happening when because I played, I didn't play the finalized version of Dark Matter my first
Yeah.
time through. But I remember you saying that you also designed, you play on hard for when you play Arkham.
Yeah, I play on hard.
So like it was kind of like it was one of those things that because like that's even like for me like when it comes to the idea of designing like I have a campaign idea but like it's such a daunting task and that's also kind of like why I wanted to do this video as well was to kind of like talk about the process for people and even myself to learn from someone who's made such a who has accomplished it already. But like so did you go like did you like the process of going from hard to standard and easy, how was that kind of like tackled? Was that a challenge?
Balancing is probably the most difficult part of making a campaign for me, other than like starting and actually taking the time to do things.
Yeah.
But balancing it, I'll like my suggestion is just playtesting. Just do an infinite amount of playtesting with more players that has never played it before,
Yeah.
and keep track of what people are saying. Um, don't always take their suggestions, but their feelings are always valid. So it's like a lot of players will feel that a scenario is too hard, but they might not suggest the best ways to fix it. But if a lot of players are thinking it's too hard, then it's probably too hard in some way,
Yeah, yeah.
or it feels too challenging in some way. Yeah.
I know that. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you go.
Oh, no worries. I don't remember what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
sure. No. So I know that actually that's a specific thing that happened with me in the second scenario, Electric Nightmare.
Yeah.
I had a hard time with it my first time through. And honestly, though, I don't know if things were just changed or if I just knew better and I approached it better. But I think now it's like it's a perfect balance for this. And it might just be because I got better, right? Like that's the kind of thing too. Like this is like what you're saying, like when you can't trust all like you don't follow every piece of advice because sometimes they just got the bad draw, right? Like that's how this game works. That's variance, right?
Yeah. I will say that the version you first played and final version, the version you first played was a lot harder than the final version.
Oh, okay. So that makes me feel a little bit better.
I've nerfed everything across the board.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I figured I used to have the mentality of like I want to kill the players.
Yeah.
Like I want to make this very challenging.
Yeah.
But because I don't know, I'm sadistic or something. But I've kind of changed the mood over time and decided it might feel better for the players to go easier instead of harder. There's always more like I've added the ultimatums if someone's looking for a real challenge, if that makes sense. So there's more options to adjust the difficulty towards the harder side. But on the blind playthrough, I really want people to actually play the campaign and not die.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm okay with people it being easier than harder.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Because and this also like as you were saying, because I think also the blind playthrough is very important, and also the story
exactly.
is so nice. So like having them experience that is really cool. All right, so another question before we get into some other stuff is
Yeah.
what was your biggest challenge of designing the campaign? I know balance is hard, but like what was there like a scenario or a moment that was just like really hard to figure out?
Let me think about
Yeah.
this. I well, there's two obvious like scenarios that pop up in my mind because they both had a complete rework done. Everything else kind of like stayed within the same realm of how the first version
Yeah.
went, but Shadows of
Yep.
Earth and Fragment of Carcosa are two scenarios that was like basically completely scrapped from the original version and remade completely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can kind of talk about how they used to be and how they are now.
Sure.
Shadows of Earth used to be it. Right now it's known to be as the like the thing
Yeah.
imitation deception scenario. It's like basically Among Us, but it kind of it used to be it had a similar theme. It's still going to a spaceship, but there weren't any deduction mechanics involved. You just kind of walked around the ship and found crewmates and tried to save them while there's one single entity that's like following you around and trying to murder you.
Yeah.
Um, the major problem with that was that the main mechanic of Shadows was playing with ally assets. So I had a lot of treacheries that would like discard your ally assets or like scale based off how many ally assets are in your discard pile, things like that. Um, just a lot of the same treacheries made it through to the end, but instead of ally assets, it's turned into only crew assets. The
Nice.
problem
Yeah.
with scaling with ally assets was that it affected some investigators more than the others.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tommy would have a really bad time playing Shadows
Yeah.
of the Earth, for example.
Yeah.
Um, in that version, the entity was actually shuffled into the scanning deck as well.
Yeah. I
So
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, you would walk around and the entity, and then sometimes you'd have to scan for the entity and then try to fight it. But it turned it's kind of like a mundane task. It was also really too hard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I kind of really liked the idea of a deduction mechanic and implemented that instead. And now I think it's one of the highlights of the campaign.
Yeah. I think
So
it's
that turned out pretty well.
yeah. I've said in all my videos about this as I've talked about this, but this part right here, the scenario threes,
Yeah.
is are my is just I love it. It's really good. And in the Shadow of the Earth, the changes that came with it are really nice. Because I like what you've also done. We'll talk. I imagine I'm prone to repeating myself, but
Okay. Yeah.
one thing that I enjoyed is that with now this new the evidence, right?
Yeah.
You have it so that there's this balance where if you do one too quick or the other too quick, the Mythos deck will punish you, or alternatively, the evidence card will punish you. And I think that's a really nice balance
Yeah.
there, which is a really compelling push and pull because you got to go quick because something the dread that you're feeling in this scenario is really nice, but you can't go too quick in either direction. And I think it's a big success with that one.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and there's that balancing act between evidence and scanning that's it's very hard to toe the line between which one is better or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like should you send some people back to the tat or not?
Yeah,
It's
yeah. Yeah, because especially because if
yeah,
you're holding them and they die, that's bad, right?
yeah.
So, but you
And
don't
there's a
want to
lot of
send
treacheries that
someone
punish
back.
you for holding them
Yeah, yeah, and you don't want to send someone
if
back
you're
in
not
case
sure
they
if
kill
they're
you.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Fragment of Carcosa.
Yeah, Fragment of Carcosa. Yeah, it is a scenario in this camp.
Yeah,
The final version is it's very much a logic puzzle again,
yeah,
similar to Electric Nightmare. I decided to do another logic puzzle scenario while reworking Fragment because basically because of Electric Nightmare. I wasn't gonna change Electric Nightmare, and I figured that I like the idea of custom camp being able to focus on different ideas compared to normal campaigns.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
it's like kind of like how TFA, like people say it's like, oh, it's very punishing, and it there's like agility is better, blah blah blah. I like the idea of like, oh, Dark Matter is a logic puzzle campaign, or like so like we can kind of focus on different ideas. So adding another pure logic puzzle campaign makes it so I can get a better target audience.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like sell the campaign, or else basically there was only the Electric Nightmare being a puzzle in the campaign, and it would feel very out of place.
And I can attest to that too. I think that if that's the philosophy, it's a total success, because now with Electric Nightmare and Fragment of Carcosa, it's like there's a theme that runs through it, and even to an extent.
Exactly.
In the Shadow of Earth, like it kind of, even though it's not a puzzle, like it's just you get resources, right? Like you get like information chunks. It still kind of feels it, and it still fits in with that mindset.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's for the Electric Nightmare Fragment, there's a duality of like being the second and the second to last.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely.
But overall, I wouldn't say the final version of Fragment is a pure success, because it is kind of exhausting to play. It's even I find it exhausting to play. So, but for me, I had the mentality of it's better to be memorable than to be boring.
Definitely.
And I thought the previous version of Fragment was, I barely remember what happens in it. I designed it. You kind of just walked around collecting clues, and then there's the twist that there's the like the basically Dark Matter twist that, oh, you're too late. Tisilda was already ascended, and then you just walk back, and that was it for the entirety of Fragment.
Yeah.
Which the original design of Fragment was basically that. It was basically, the scenario was supposed to be the twist.
Yeah.
The idea that you're going into it expecting a boss fight, but nothing happens the entire scenario. There aren't even any enemies. All the enemies are actually obstacles.
Yeah, it's like, I remember that, because I'm weird. Because I'm a very much, my favorite type of Arkham is Mood Arkham, and the first Fragment is very moody, and I remember really liking it.
Was very... Yeah, and the whole idea of, like, there's no Doom on the agenda.
Yeah.
There's no Doom threshold, and then there's no enemies, and there's no boss.
It's just,
like, what is happening?
And,
so it was,
And I think it's a good idea, and but then exactly that, you put it into practice, and you're kind of just like, wait a minute. It's kind of just a little bit boring. So I do think that, like, even though my first time through when I played the flipping logic puzzle version, I had the Profana, which broke it because I could just cheat the puzzle. But I think the mood is still there. Like, it still feels empty, and like you're like, something's not right, and there's still the curtains that you can get tangled up in. But it has this another thing that makes it more unique. And even though, as you said, it's not going to work for everybody, it's better to have something that's memorable than... Because I still see that map when I go to sleep some night. I can see the flipping, and I'm like, how do I do this? So I think you really... like exactly that. It's memorable, and that's ultimately good.
The thematic win of Fragment of Carcosa is it actually drives you insane.
Yes.
But,
sorry. Here you go.
Oh, yeah, no, so that was kind of like my idea, was I wanted to make each scenario memorable.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I've succeeded, because...
Yeah, I also feel that, because I can, if someone... I can like sum them all up in like one line, and it's a memorable line for each of them, right?
Yeah, that's good.
But it's not, and it's like they actually all have like a hook too, which is really fun. So then my next question is kind of this: did you design it in order? Did you go 1 to 8, or like 1, the 3 block, and then 8, or did you have another process?
So that's gonna be some fun dark matter history.
Oh, okay.
Because originally dark matter was this. It was the Tatterdemalion, Electric Nightmare, and Starfall. It was a 3 scenario campaign.
Interesting.
It was a very short campaign.
Yeah.
The first version of dark matter was only those 3 scenarios, and so you'd basically you do the Tatterdemalion and Electric Nightmare had the same story, but then instead of the whole search for a fragment section, it just went directly into Starfall.
Okay.
And in Starfall, there was actually a first act, which is the search for fragment,
Okay.
in which you would go to fragment, see that there's nothing, and then the rest of Starfall unveils. The playtesters really liked the campaign, but everyone was like, I wish it was longer. I wish there were more to explore, because in Starfall, you know how there's the 3 locales. There's the Asteroid Belt, the Mars, and the Migos,
Yes.
and Yugoth. There isn't as much connection to them without the middle of the campaign, right? Because you just kind of meet them for the first time in Starfall.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of sense for me to extend the campaign through the middle 3 scenarios to have one exploring each of the factions first, so then you kind of get to know the people that you're saving later.
Definitely.
And so then after the 3-part campaign was done, I decided to build the middle of the campaign, and I think, let me try to figure out the order. I did Lost Quantum first, and then Strange Moons, Shadows, Machine in Yellow, and then Fragment.
Yeah.
And then reworked Shadows and Fragment again.
Nice.
So it's kind of like a very scattered
Nice.
way of building the campaign. But I think it worked out in its favor, because since I knew the ending already, I was able to add a lot of little hints, like thematic hints or mechanical hints between the middle scenarios and the ending.
Yeah, definitely.
So, for like visiting all the factions before meeting them again in Starfall, if I already knew how they were gonna be met in Starfall, I could frame them in a more interesting way in the middle scenarios, in a sense.
You know, this actually makes total sense too, because I want to talk about scan in a little bit, but the scanning deck in Tatterdemalion and Starfall play pretty similarly.
Yeah.
But in these 3, you really explored the design space of scan, which now makes total sense that they came after.
Yeah. No, for sure. The Tatterdemalion and Starfall was like original scan, and then I was like, I needed to explore scan more with the middle 3. Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
And that makes total sense now. It's actually kind of cool knowing that. And because in my mind, I was like, so you had scan in here, and then you got to this scenario, and you're like, well, how can I make it different?
Somehow I was like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
came up
really
with
cool.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then with scan, because where did the inspiration for scan come from? Because I love the heck out of scan.
Yeah, scan is my highlight mechanic of this campaign for sure. Something that I explored a lot in this campaign. Well, the easy answer is that it's explore.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a bit more intricate than explore. So it was originally, I really liked Veiled from the Dream Eaters, because of the way it could tell a story unique to each location. And I wanted to figure out a way to be able to tell more stories in the location.
Yeah.
I actually have I saved a few objects about this.
Oh, let's
Here's
go.
the original version of Scan. It wasn't a custom back. There was story cards and with icons above it. So this is recognizable. This is like the back isn't Hallie, but it's supposed to be Hallie. But this is like if you scanned at like one of these locations, you'd go through the story cards, find an icon matching it, read the whole story card, and then flip it over, and it's the enemy.
Interesting.
So so in that sense, it was kind of like story card based, kind of similar to like there was a lot of story similar to like how Cutoff does the Veiled.
Yeah.
But in practice, I figured that it was like I think it's something Jack Straxy told me that inspired me was that it's better to tell stories through gameplay than to just write the story out on the card. So I decided to like the whole story on this card right now. It's basically, oh, you find a evil weird servant robot and it's weird, but that whole story could just be is the same as just drawing the card. If you
Yeah.
just draw Howley, it tells the same story, and you can kind of like save a lot of time on that.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so then that's when I created the custom backs for scanning, and there, then the rest is history. Just exploring the different design spaces of scanning.
Yeah,
For the
and
middle
I
finger.
think that's what makes also the blind playthrough so nice is because when you scan, you don't know what you're gonna
Yeah,
get, and
yeah. That was,
yeah,
yeah, that was one of my pet peeves of TFA, which is the Explorer deck. You like, it's not really exploring if you kind of see the other locations while you're looking through them.
yeah,
So having that surprise happen every time you scan is great. Then I can add like enemies or assets, things that are truly unexpected in the
yeah,
scanning deck.
yeah. Or even just like it being just a story card. Like when that happened in Tattered
Yeah,
Emolian, I was like, I was expecting there to just be like, I was like, oh, I got the suit so I can go outside. This is really cool. I got some radiation tablets, and then suddenly I just get the story card, and I'm like, whoa, this is already different.
yeah, or the location, the
Yes,
ventilation
the
shaft.
event. Yep, yeah, yeah. No,
That's a fun one to get.
it's actually because I see it also. I noticed in the FAQ there was a thing because like I personally don't look unless I'm like there's down to like two cards and I'm scanning. But when I was
Oh
playing
yeah,
with Lyle, I actually completely forgot about the ventilation shaft, and I was like, we should scan this deck because it might be some victory. And then there's just a ventilation shaft, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, which is
yeah,
cool because it still leads to surprises. And I think it
yeah,
leads to a really nice like big climax in Starfall, right? Because
yeah.
then it could be pretty much anything. Like this the thing that about like I cannot deny about this campaign at all is that Starfall is one of the best final scenarios to play blind because it feels like a movie, right? It's
No, yeah, it does. Yeah,
because it's not a particularly like hard scenario unless you try to do the secret ending, right?
yeah. It's
But
pretty standard scenario.
it feels like such an epic. It's like a seven samurai getting the whole group together at the start, right? It's just and I'm so excited to play it with Lyle because it's just the scope on it is huge. You literally feel like you're flying through space. And
Yeah,
to go back to what people were saying, how they wanted more, like sometimes that's like the best feedback you can ever get, right? Because
yeah,
now, with the goal of having Lost Quantum, The Shadow of Earth, and Strange Moons, you're now connected to these places. Like
exactly.
I need to save the Migos when I play this campaign. Otherwise, I just it's in my heart. I need to, and now like there's that attachment, which is really nice.
So, Starfall's the idea of Starfall was kind of also an integral core of the creation of this campaign. So when I sought out to make a campaign, the one goal I had for the final scenario was that it can't be a boss fight in an extra dimensional dimension location because it's been overdone.
Yeah, yeah,
In Arkham campaigns, it's been overdone, and the way I handled it was that I wanted the ending to be a push your luck scenario, like Midnight Masks or the Last King style scenario, because those are my favorite types of scenarios.
yeah.
And that's why I framed it in a way that's like save as many people as you can, and and yeah, that's it. And for the theme of Starfall, the idea of like exploring a bunch of planets and things, I think. So this is basically me. It's like I think that's what people expect when they think of a space campaign. The
Yeah.
idea of like going to different planets and then like meeting people and then exploring.
Yeah.
So that's why I left it to the end, because I wanted to like fulfill that satisfaction at the end.
Yeah.
Basically, have people keep expecting it popping up somewhere, and then finally in Starfall, it's like, yes, this is the space exploration I was waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's true too. Because like you kind of even like now even in the full campaign you still get some light
Yeah.
exploration, but like the scope on Starfall is gigantic, and like
Yeah.
because then even like when you like move the ship around, it's still just it's incredibly elegant too, with all that. I had I have a question here as well. That this is I imagine it's pretty simple, but simple to answer, but complex in how the design was approached.
Yeah.
But why the 3A, 3B, 3C? Like, what inspired the switch, like the choice for how you could approach these scenarios?
It was. Yeah, I guess it's pretty much search for Cutoff. How people were saying, like I was reading up on the feedback for Search of Cutoff, and people were saying how like they wish Dream Eaters explored the locations more and had a scenario for each of the islands. So I was like, I could do that.
Nice.
I could have a scenario for each of the islands, and the fun part of the Search for Cutoff was that you could decide where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I wanted to add that to Dark Matter as well.
Nice. And then I imagine that was
Yeah.
pretty early on in that process too. You thought that if you went in a certain order, it would have to change them slightly.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like if you could choose the order, then there has to be a point in why you would choose order.
Yeah.
Exactly. Also, like I think I'm much better at designing side stories than full campaigns. And so these three scenarios are basically just side stories, right? They're kind of like little small contained stories within the full campaign, but they do let you like explore a unique feel to them that doesn't need to really like share as much DNA as every other scenario.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like in comparison to something like Innsmouth, every scenario feels like you're drowning underwater with a bunch of fish people
Yeah.
coming to you. But with Dark Matter, I was allowed to, by doing the explore a different locale for the three scenarios, I was allowed to explore the different feeling as well.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to feel distinct.
Awesome. All right. Well,
So yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry. So one thing about the three middle scenarios
Yeah.
that this is just like a funny little story. So I was arguing with myself if I should allow people to skip a scenario or not.
Oh, okay.
Because it's like why not, right? Maybe you would decide thematically you only had time to go to Shadow of the Earth and Strange Moons, and then you just skip to Machine in Yellow afterwards.
Yeah.
So, and now with the variable campaign length, it kind of makes more sense that it could be a possible way to handle this.
Yeah.
The actual answer to why I didn't let you do that was because I just wanted people to play all the scenarios.
No, I think and I think that's fair too, and I think it also I think it feels better too because there's a weird thing where the Arkham Horror, the card game, is much more pulpy than what you would traditionally do with like weird horror stories, right?
That's true. Yeah, for
and
sure.
like if you're kind of the idea is that you're doing this and you're trying to like the flavor in this one, the story is that you're trying to make up for the mistakes that you made when you were a cultist, right? You're trying to right those wrongs. So it feels kind of like with that pulpy narrative, even in science fiction, pulpiness still exists, right? You're the heroes who are visiting these places to try to right the wrongs that you may have caused, right?
Yeah.
So I think even it fits well even there with the story.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would not skip. I would never take that choice, even if it was presented. They're just too fun. And maybe one day I'll get my Lost Quantum first.
It's so funny that you've played that lost every single time.
Yeah, we have I have one of my patrons ordered me a physical copy. So when Travis, Burnett, and I are together, I'm doing a blind playthrough with them, and
that'll be fun.
I hope they choose Lost Quantum first, just so I can.
Just so you can finally play it.
So I think this part's gonna go pretty quick, but just I want to like poke in at bring on the boards out for the scenarios and kind of just poke at it a bit and see if there's anything that I myself will remember going through, and if there's any stories about individual scenarios in the design.
Yeah, and I have a few saved cards I can pop out.
Awesome, sweet. All right, so the Tatterdemalion. Am I saying have I always been pronouncing that right, or is that wrong?
That's correct. Well, I mean, actually, I don't know if it's correct, but that's how I pronounce it.
Okay, then that's correct enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when it comes to how you, this is actually a question that's still kind of broad, but I think this is here that's out. How do you approach designing a scenario? Because I've talked to a few creators, and some of them, they like to start with the mechanics. Some of them need to start it might have been you who said this in the Discord, but like you like to start with the art or like the stuff. So like, where do you like to start with yours for it?
This is very messy because for some scenarios I'll start with the story. Some scenarios I'll start with the mechanics.
Okay,
so I guess the answer is it depends on how important the story is to the campaign in this specific scenario.
Mm-hmm.
For the Tatterdemalion, I started with the story.
Nice.
I wanted the idea of the Tatterdemalion was like exploring a creepy ship, waking up an AI that wanted to kill you, and then trying to figure out how to stop it.
Sweet.
That kind of leaded into Electric Nightmare as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah. Electric
Nightmare obviously is a mechanics-based scenario.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously. So then like the 3-act decks of this scenario basically describe what I just said.
Yeah.
As a story. And the scanning was integrated because I wanted there to be multiple ways to approach the scenario.
Yeah.
Like so for the second part of the scenario where you had to find the brains.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like 2 ways to get to the ship's bridge, the airlocks, which I mean the EVA suit, which I think everyone expects, and the ventilation shaft. You could also even just get the brains through scanning virtually on the ship.
Yeah, with the
mind machine interface.
Yes, the mind machine, yeah.
Or even if you're lucky, just killing Hallie would get it as well. And that also led into the scanning at the cryosleep quarters for the last act as well. The idea of having multiple ways to solve this scenario.
Yeah, and I think I talked about this in my review too, is that I think that even if this was designed as just a 3-part campaign to just start, this scenario still does a really good job at being basic Arkham. It's still a really good tutorial first scenario because it has a clear objective to start, right?
Yeah.
It sets the mood really well, and then like it tells the players exactly what to do. Because I honestly think with a custom campaign, people aren't privileged like me where they get to play it for a job, right? So the first hook needs to be really good because people don't have a lot of time, right? And the first scenario needs to just bring it in, not be too complicated, because if it's too complicated, they're going to be like, this could be like this the whole time. And I really like the simple flow that this one has, and the scariness of this. The ship will explode if you don't do it in 7 turns.
So I completely agree with the idea of the first scenario is probably the most important scenario of a custom campaign, at least.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, if you don't hook someone in the first scenario, they're not gonna play the rest of the campaign. So that's kind of why the scenario is like, full of hooks.
Yeah.
The prologue is a hook.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I'm trying to hook players on the idea of like, haha, I'm cheeky.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first agenda is a hook.
Yep.
If this agenda advances, the ship will explode and everyone will die.
Yeah, like when Lyle saw that, he was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's exactly it just gets them right in. And then
it's like in medias res, right? You have to put investigators into a situation where like with urgency.
Yep.
And then they'll act. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the scan deck comes out, and the players are like, "Wow, this campaign's gonna do some wild stuff." And like, yeah, it's just another hook. And then even the resolution is a nice hook into the future too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The come quickly or else the monster will eat my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
and also because you're like
TV show like cliffhanger.
Yeah, no, exactly that, 100%. Yeah. I really like a lot about this scenario. I talked about this in my review, but the escape pod bay, like, it makes then the player go, why is this here? Why would the designer here? And I think that's actually one of the things that I really feel about this campaign in particular, is like this custom campaign in particular, is that the locations are very deliberately there, right? There's not just that location because it's not that location that's out of the way for victory, because your victory is earned through advancing the story, right?
Yeah. I don't have. There's very few victory on locations in this campaign.
Yeah, which is exciting too, because then it makes the players think, then where does this guy show up? Which I don't remember where he exists, but the big.
He should be.
Is he on the back of the thing? Yeah, this guy.
This guy is fun.
Because I remember even my first time through, I was like, 5 fist? This guy's unkillable. But then you're like, you just think about it for a second, and you're like, oh no, this is actually really clever. We're supposed to send this guy out into space.
And this guy's like kind of it's aliens. It's classic. Throw a big monster out of the airlock.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's kind of like a little sub story and just Yeah,
definitely. And like it works so well too, because that's very engaging for a player, right? Because they're like, there's now all these great memories. So the other thing I also want to talk about, I mean, there's also the memories mechanic, which I think is really just simple, right? It fits with the flavor. Yeah. There's some cool stuff that I like, where there's this haunting past, where it's really easy at first, and then it gets a little bit of a nightmare later on, right?
Yeah.
And then that also leads into these guys, the Reminiscence.
Oh yeah, that's another fun highlight of the campaign.
Yeah, which I think is really. Which one am I missing? Is this the defeat? Yeah, the defeat one. I think these guys are really cool. And then I remember on my first playthrough, I got absolutely slaughtered by them. I had I think 3 or 4 tablets. So I think I had the most that I could get.
The tablets are horrible.
They are horrible, but I think the thing is, on my second playthrough, I had none, because I prioritized getting rid of them, and I think that's really it's a nice little, because I imagine the hidden mechanics there because Haster and Carcosa.
Yeah.
And I think these are a really good little sub game that keeps even seasoned players on their toes, which is really fun.
Yeah, and for the first scenario where you don't know the outcome of what happens if these are in the victory display.
Yeah, there's some dread there.
Scary. Yeah, it's like, what's gonna happen? You know it's bad, but you don't know what.
I also now, I'm kind of chuckling a bit because the icon for the set is, a tablet with words on it, so it's kind of telling you what's gonna happen.
I love building the icons for these scenarios.
Yeah.
It's really fun. Here, I'll show you an old Reminiscence.
Alright, secretly add this card to your hand. After you discover 2 or more clues during your turn, add a tablet token to the cast bag for the remainder of the campaign and remove this card. Interesting. So yeah, I think like there's more counterplay with these ones because this basically just shuts down tempo. But
yeah, exactly.
The idea is still there.
So it changed into the newer versions because I wanted it to feel like you're betraying your team because it's like a reaction. So you have to complete an objective to get rid of it instead of it just being like generic bad stuff happening if you do something.
Yeah. And it's always a surprise too. Like I think I dropped one on Lyle when he killed an enemy, and I was like, "Can you do that again, please?"
It's like nope.
But I think I love even like the flavor too, where like right now, when it's in your hand, you have to basically choose between your past or like your present in a way, which is kind of cool. Now that like it's kind of hitting me a bit. Like so, you either like accept that you're still like loyal to Haster in a way, right?
Yeah.
Or you could hinder your team, but it's never easy to break your bonds with the cult of Haster, so it punishes them. And I think that's really even also just some good flavor resonance.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So one last thing about this scenario.
Yeah.
So, like you said, there's a lot of thought behind the locations.
Yeah.
There's, so this layout is actually something that the layout and the act structure basically, for how to introduce scan to the campaign, because scanning is an integral part of the campaign, but very difficult part of design is how to introduce new mechanics to players.
Okay, yeah.
So the idea with the first act of this scenario was basically I wanted players to walk through the ship first while it's dark, and then walk back being able to scan again. So you're already familiar with the layout of the ship, but then you come back with the extra ability to scan.
Okay. So it's kind of like even a little Metroidvania, right? Where
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you now have the ability to double jump and look at all the secrets you can uncover.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
But it's also like, since it's there's no longer like the you don't need to be worried about finding new locations anymore. You only have to be worried about scanning in locations you've already revealed.
Yeah, definitely.
So you just know that scanning is how you advance the act, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's really cool. Neat. All right, I'm gonna just look through the scanning deck, see if there's any other. The cyber virus. Lyle got inflicted with this.
This is just that's kind of like a surprise.
Yeah, and I like it too because it's not a bad surprise. Like it's not like you draw an Ancient Evils, right?
Yeah.
But I think isn't there an Ancient Evils you can draw? Yes. The what type of ship is this? Yeah, but this one gives you victory too, and you gotta take it.
You have to take it.
Yeah, you just have to.
I don't know anyone who wouldn't take it.
But it's like, because even though like it seems scary and it sticks with you because you're infected, it's completely reasonable, which is like just cool. And then it's also just victory in the future. It's just a nice little thing here.
Yeah, one of the important parts of scanning is that there's nothing bad in it.
Yeah,
there's nothing that really. Yeah.
I was even about to say the enemies are both aloof.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So this is the only one that's like pure bad, but it gives you a victory.
Yeah, and it also doesn't attack you; it just goes in your hand. Right?
Yeah. So you can kind of plan around it. I never wanted. So I was kind of like trying to teach players that scanning good. Never be scared to scan.
Yeah.
Until the Starfall, but we'll get there.
We'll cross that. But I mean that's what you're allowed to do in the final scenario, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think we can move on to.
Yeah.
I'll just probably just delete them. I don't think we'll need to come back.
Yeah. All good.
All right.
So then you enter the virtual dreamlands.
Yeah.
Kind of incorporating a lot from a lot of different campaigns when this was made. So.
Oh yeah.
It's like dreamlands, right?
So
there's Explore from TFA, the theme from Carcosa.
Yeah.
the little the virtual access key was like a direct copy of the silver key.
Yeah, and then we have the so like then how it works is for there you start in the school grounds for people who are watching this who haven't played it, which I once again you should just go play it. But you get to enter the school, and then when you enter the school, you get the jumbled up
Oh yeah,
thing.
the little jigsaw puzzle.
I'll just grab the action. Not that it matters, but I just place. Bing.
So this is a fun scenario to design.
You know, it's I really like the whole. Even my first time through, like the sliding puzzle was obviously weird, and it's not like what I.
It's not Arkham.
Yeah, it's not what I want from Arkham. But the thing is, if every scenario only gave me what I wanted from Arkham, no one else would get what they wanted. Right? So like for like the people who love this kind of stuff, and like I know like Lyle really liked the moving puzzle part. Like that's great because it's really cool, and it's also I think what's most important, and I think this was a design home run, is just that it's easy to you don't have to spend actions. You just get the clues, and then you can just solve your puzzle, right? Which is nice, and then you get to take that to your advantage in the second half when the damn boogeyman shows up.
So this is kind of like this entire scenario is kind of goes back to the idea of how to teach the players to use a mechanic.
Yeah.
It's so the jigsaw puzzle is teaching players to just be able to swap. When the boogeyman comes in, I hope players understand that you can use swapping to your advantage to avoid the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the children comes in, you have to use it to your advantage, or you'll get doom.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of small teaching moments here. It's like during early versions of the scenario, people would forget about Maha's abilities. People still forget about her ability when they get stuck with the boogeyman. But you know how you need to use her ability to move to the entrance hall in the first part of the scenario?
Yeah.
That's basically me telling people she exists. You can use her ability.
Yeah.
And
it's one of those things too, because like the first time through, you're like, why would I want to do this, right? But it actually makes sense because you need to force them to do it, otherwise they'll forget it exists, even if they are forced to do it, right? Because it is very powerful. It does cost you 3 cards, right? But it also stops you from potentially dying to the boogeyman. Because you also, if you have the soak, you can just walk away from him, right?
Yeah.
And like it's there's a joke that my users always say where I always have like I don't like unkillable monsters. But the boogeyman, he's not a monster that's unkillable. He's an enemy, but just because like he could be an asset that exists as well, right? Like he's an enemy because that's how you deal damage to things, right? But like we can't look at this guy as something to kill. This is something that you need to run away from. And there's only 2 ways to run away, which is by running away or with this little card down
or
here.
being smart with how to swap your locations and using it to your advantage.
Yeah, and that would happen on my second time through. I don't think even the boogeyman he moved close to me once, but he never was on my location because exactly that. Once you know what to do, he's a lot less scary because you can just like switch things around very easily, and then while you're doing that, you're also pushing your objective forward, which is saving the children.
Yeah.
Hello, we're the children.
Children.
Yeah. Which I think is also really cool. So, like, where was the idea? How did the idea come from this one for the story? Was it like a, why Boogeyman in a school? Why children as the AI? Like, because it's a very unique idea. I'm just curious where it came from.
Well, this is funny because this plot line was lifted from the Ripples from Carcosa Call of Cthulhu module.
Oh, sick.
So in their story basically mimics the second part of Tatterdemalion and Electric Nightmare,
Cool.
and a little bit of Fragment of Carcosa. But in that story, to disable the cybernetic AI controlled by the minds of 6 children, you go into a virtual school and have to defeat the boogeyman.
Nice.
So
So yeah,
it's quite directly lifted from there.
no, that's cool. That's cool because I remember, yeah, I remember hearing that there was inspiration from a Call of Cthulhu story, which is cool. And honestly, I think stuff like that is just awesome because it's a cool idea for a scenario, right? And it'd be hard pressed to try to make your own from it, right? Like to like be like, okay, it's not a boogeyman, they're not children, it's something else, and you're just scratching your like, what could it be? So yeah,
Yeah, it made sense to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but in a way that I like. So I kept most of the story here same.
Nice.
Which is why this is mostly a mechanical scenario.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense because the story was already there.
Yeah.
Neat.
It is funny though because it's like you definitely don't expect to fight Pennywise in a sci-fi campaign.
Yeah, no, and that's actually kind of like what's really fun with it too because this one feels the most grounded to what traditional Arkham is because it's just scary, right?
Yeah.
And then one thing I personally love is that when you start saving the children and the clown starts losing some of its features, and like the story that even gives you as the player, like the clown now has only sharp claws and teeth, but otherwise he's just a normal guy. And I just think that's like a fun little narrative that the players can put themselves in as well. Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. Swapping actually comes from. So swapping is like great, and I got inspired by. I wish I remembered the name of the campaign. Let me search through the custom campaigns.
Sure.
There's one campaign that. It's the first time I've ever seen anyone play with the idea of moving locations around, and that really inspired me for the swapping locations because like it's like in traditional Arkham we haven't even seen any moving locations yet, but a lot of custom campaign have started using it in some ways. Let me see. Oh, I think these are all standalones. I don't know where the campaigns are.
Oh, they're over here. I pulled them out. They're hanging out over here.
Oh yeah, thanks.
No problem.
Ordo Templi Orientis. Ordo's second scenario involved a forest labyrinth, a 4x4 forest labyrinth where locations would shift. So like a column of locations would shift down or left, or a row of locations would shift left or right.
Okay.
And this whole campaign has very interesting mechanics. I don't know how the state of it is right now, but I played a very early version of it. But that did inspire me for the idea of that locations could move around relative to other locations.
That's cool. Because then also like I think what's also cool with that is that you made a sliding puzzle with it, which is
Yeah.
Was that early on in the process? Was that like you were like something more than just the locations appear, or was that from like the mod, or is that just your own part of the design?
I decided on sliding puzzles.
Nice, because it does a great it's a great twist too, because like as you were saying, like with the hooks, right, where you think you're doing a good thing, and then the kids are like, no, you fool, you've given him access to our to everything, we're in trouble now. I think that's really cool.
So it's like the Tatterdemalions, like a scenario where I'm trying to hook players to normal Arkham.
Yeah.
And then the second scenario is trying to tell players like how crazy this campaign could go.
Yeah, definitely. One thing also that comes from the scenario that's very helpful are I always just call it Kate, but the K2 PS187, the different functionality depending on the number of kids that you save.
Yeah.
These are very strong cards, and I think they're just really good because they just help so much in the next little bit, and I love the addition of this one. I've always gotten in the 100%, so but even then, like just getting the free scan is really nice.
Kate is actually mostly to help for solo scaling.
Oh, cool.
Because action efficiency is very bad when scenarios have their own action abilities.
Yep.
Especially scan. Scan is like doesn't scale per players. There's a limited amount of scan in each scenario, but it's a constant amount regardless of how many players there are. So that's a like constant amount of actions that doesn't scale per player. So giving everyone an extra action helps account for that.
Yeah, because even also even the lowest function, the 25%, you get that free scan. So even then,
yeah,
nice. That is good, yeah. Because actually, honestly, yeah, that part that's a whole other mountain to have to climb. The scaling for solo.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's go on to I love this part. It's always exciting. The three of them.
The search for Fragment.
Yeah. I think what we should do is we'll talk about as it always goes, we'll talk about Lost Quantum last because that's just how it goes. And I actually want to talk about my favorite scenario in the campaign, which is Strange Moon first.
Yeah.
This one, it's really simple. I think it kind of even just has some of your design philosophy here right off the beginning. Now that, like, as we've been talking, I've kind of been like hearing how you've been approaching things more, but there's an immediate hook. What's this thing?
Yeah.
And then there's an immediate twist when you figure it out, which I think is just really cool, right? Like it's it paints such a good picture in my head. Like you land on the planet, there's this little gray who's like, "Hello, how are you?" But he's not really doing anything else. And then when you break it down, you're like, "Oh, suddenly this is weird." And it actually becomes very Arkham after being very not Arkham at first, which is really cool.
Like, Grays would very much not fit the Arkham style.
Yeah.
So, bringing back the familiar amigo is very nice.
Yeah. And even though, like, it's, like, I know the Migos and, like, they're familiar, I still felt like a weird thing in my stomach when I saw the Migo on the other side. I was like, wait a minute, something's wrong. And
like,
then...
this isn't what you expected.
Yeah. And then you get the coolest kind of little thing here, which, like, I just have to just kind of like give kudos to you on this one, because you're basically just doing like menial labor, like you're just moving things around, but you've made it so fun and engaging, and also it doesn't feel like a drag because of the design on the scientist, right?
Yeah.
That it's really fun. And the other thing that I also really like about this scenario is the story that you tell with the three brains. Right?
Yeah.
Where you have the kindergarten teacher, the poor guy who got sent out into space,
poor guy.
and then the cultist, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you kind of foreshadow that immediately on the descriptions for the cylinders, because then if players... I know some players don't read flavor text, but those that do, it makes it so that now there's immediately clues for how you should approach this.
Yeah, it's like, this cylinder seems like it might be important, so maybe we should scan that one first.
Yeah.
Kind of like a...
Yeah. And then, this is also when I was playing this my first time, seeing this scanning system it's so cool, and it's so elegant, and it's so simple. And it just blows my mind. And now it makes so much more sense that it happened after you already like had the basic scan.
Yeah.
And you were like exploring the design space of it, because it just flows so nicely. And this is also the big thing about what the scanning deck does really well, is that it hides these stories, and then you get pieces of the stories as you're kind of just figuring this whole thing out, right?
Yeah.
which is
So
really
scan
cool.
is like if you abstract it to the bottom, it's basically just search for X story card and read it,
Yeah.
or like search for X card and then set aside cards and read it. But but it allows you to hide what the title of the story card is.
Yeah,
Or what
definitely.
type of So yeah,
Yeah.
this was really fun to design, just because telling little stories through the different
Yeah.
locales.
Yeah, because like and then I love this one you get here and you're like, uh-oh, something's not right.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's the accident, which I believe is also connected to that guy. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
And
you
you
get like the
scream.
story cards, which are really fun. And I believe, if correct me if I'm wrong, but like this part right here, is this like their? So like this is their one of them is like their where they a memory of them. Yeah. Then there is the dream. So then this guy only is dreaming about. This is the cultist dreaming about just chaos. Cool.
Yeah.
And then we know this one has dreamt about Ulthar, which is great. That's that's really clever.
And it's like it doesn't spell out like exactly what happened, but basically you should be able to recognize this as the Taternamalion, right?
Yes.
It never tells you it is the Taternamalion, but you just know that there's been a mutiny on it before
Yeah.
at some point. And it's like it never tells you that that's probably the same school that you were at in Electric Nightmare, but if you recognize the art.
Yeah, and then also like with the
And the
ability
story,
where if you're controlling Kate at the
Exactly.
location,
Yeah.
it does a really good job at, and like even there, like there's and I also like what you're also doing too is at this point now, like it's told in the text of the story and like the prologue, we learn that the old ones took over Earth, right?
Yeah.
But you have all these small moments that point to that over here, right? Like this is when things started going a little bit nuts because the rioting started to. That was seems to be implied that led to it, and then also we get that big climax conclusion to that story in Starfall on the Earth card itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a fun one to see.
Yeah. And then the Byakis show up at the end.
Yes, the Vyakis.
Yeah. Which I think once again is just really simple and just like it paints a wonderful story, especially in 2-player or like in 3 or 4-player as well. But like the idea of the aliens start attacking and like the Dexter Drake with his hammer is like, you get in there, you continue to scan, I'm gonna go hold them off because they all show up at the door.
Like, I'll hold them off.
Yeah, it's a really good, like this one is just, and like this is also like where I was saying like my favorite campaign is a story, like heavy story driven.
Yeah.
And like this one is beautiful. It tells such a beautiful story and it's also just really fun, which as I said is kind of like a big success because you're really just like doing the same thing over and over again, but because you're getting all these story samples, it's really fun.
Yeah. The only problem I've had with this camp, it was always like people always like this scenario, but the only problem was how to the teaching the players part because this is a pretty complex system happening over here, and it always takes a bit of time for people to understand. Originally, I had it so that the act reveals every location once you parlay with the ego, it reveals everything, but I found that like puts too much pressure in the sense that there's so much text to read at once that it feels needlessly complicated.
I think that's very fair. Yeah, it would be an information overload.
Yeah. So having to make players walk into each location to kind of slowly figure out how everything works, I think helps.
Yeah, and I think it does pretty good because, like, assuming they move to any of... Basically, if they move to any location except Reality Simulator, they'll get an idea and they'll be like, maybe I'll use this guy to put a brain on this location that I just moved into. And then they can be like, okay, so now I got to find the reality simulator, right? Yeah, I think that is. I see what you're saying. Yeah, flipping them all. That's just a lot of text, and you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, yeah. And then you have to kind of like take 5 minutes to read everything and try to understand what's going on.
Yeah, you're like, now whose turn was it?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Nice, that's a good change. I think I don't have much else or anything about this one. I think the Mythos deck is really cool because it just kind of like
Yeah.
it doesn't really hinder. Oh, I have to talk about this card, the colors of space. I think that this is the best designed treachery card I've ever played with from a custom campaign.
Thank you.
It's just so good, and like I play very skill heavy decks, and I just think it's like it punishes them in such a way, but it also is like not bad, but it's also can be really bad. I just think it's like I love this card. Every time I see it, I think I go, oh yeah, I love this card. It's just I love Colors of Space.
Yeah, I liked it'll come back a bit later, I think, in the discussion, but I liked when treacheries force you to do something, but it's not necessarily horrible. It forces you to do something fun.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that makes sense. So it's like if you're a skill heavy deck, it's like, oh no, I guess I commit everything for this test.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah, and then also like you can still even take advantage of it too, right?
Yeah.
Like because it's not like you have to commit everything to this test. It's just when you do your next test you have to commit everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think this one's pretty it's pretty simple. I think this one's just a really nice nice scenario.
A lot of the scenarios have like a main mechanic and a side mechanic.
Yeah.
If the main mechanic isn't like super complicated, so this one's side mechanic was the double tokens.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually like that too in the tablet on this one because when I got to this first time, I was like, reveal 2 additional tokens. But like, it's good because it then puts fear because now players definitely know they don't want to get any of those hidden cards out again. Like they want to avoid those if able.
Those tablets are scary.
They are.
This was designed before Blessing Curse, but now that Blessing Curse are out,
oh my god,
there's so many tokens out. It's so funny.
Well, I think actually that's kind of like something that is really interesting to see. Because the old designs, especially like this one, like for example, Blessed and Cursed changes the design on that one, but I think it's obviously okay for like it to affect one scenario. And another example, obviously, was Profana in the Fragment of Carcosa, and
we've gotten a lot of movement cards recently.
And even Janae in Strange Moons, she trivializes that one. I got that one, and I just like I blurred through it, and I think I got out like before the Byakuya like even showed up.
Yeah, Janae kind of breaks a bit of Strange Moons, but
like stuff like that is ultimately unavoidable and okay, right? Because it's just one scenario.
Yeah.
All right. In the Shadow of Earth. So yeah, this is the one that changed a lot. I love that it's a spaceship. It looks like a spaceship. It's always makes me laugh.
Yeah. I love seeing people's reactions to the spaceship.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like, yes, it is a spaceship. It makes sense.
So this one is we talked about this one a lot at the front, where this one is changed. Yep. This one changed quite a bit, and now it has the scanning deck and the evidence deck, which I think works really nicely, and it's really, really good for it. Actually, even my last 2 times playing it, I got out before the entity even showed up.
Yeah, the entity is almost a secret boss in this scenario because of how rare it pops out.
Yeah. Which is actually kind of cool, because then it's just like the fear of the entity, like bringing the entity on your ship, makes it so he's like scary, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the fear. And then if you fight him, you're like, oh, this guy is still very scary because he hits for 3 and 2. But
it's possible to beat it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I remember the first version where he was in the deck, and I do think that I agree with you as well. This new version is a highlight of the, because I remember even when I was playing it, you told me that there was a new version in the works.
Yeah.
When I played it, yeah.
Um, yeah, this we've talked about this scenario.
Yeah,
Rats.
I think we've kind
I
of
think
like.
I heard that you hate surging rats.
Oh yeah, that's always a joke for me, but that's just my own bias. But I think it like ultimately it still plays just fine. But yeah, that's kind of the joke that Justin hates surging rats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, these are surging rats.
Yeah.
Ooh, this does highlight one interesting thing about this campaign.
hmm
I think is I don't reuse any like barely any of the core set treacheries.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't see rotting remains, you don't see grasping hands, you don't see rats.
You see rats with a question mark.
Yeah, you see rats with a question mark.
Yeah.
So so really the reasoning behind that is that every time I would use like something like rotting remains, I'm like, but I could design the rotting remains that mechanically interacts with this scenario.
Yeah.
So then I'm just there's not enough space in the encounter deck for it anymore.
Yeah, and I think like it's one of those things too that it
Yeah.
like for example in Call of the Plague Bearer
Yeah.
they reuse theirs, and I think it works really nice for that one because if you're in a facility with dead bodies and rotting remains thematically makes sense. I think as well in this campaign, stepping it outside of that is what it also fits much better, right? And I
So
think works really well for it because yours kind of
yeah.
like it deals with it in different ways. Like there's still like for in that I think in the one we just looked at in Strange Moons, there was like a double brain essentially rotting
Yeah.
remains.
Yeah.
It dealt you 3 horror maximum and it was a brain test, a double brain
That's
test.
rotting
Yeah.
remains,
Yeah.
but with a mechanic twist based off the scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's
Just
kind of like for people who look at designing, there's obviously nothing wrong with making your own twist or even using them if they fit. It's really just like the idea and preference that you have and also for the feeling of what you want for your campaign.
there's a I think there's a really cool design difference between me and Dr. Jack Science
Yeah.
with Plague Bearer. I love Plague Bearer, but so and it's very notable if you look at the treacheries. Plague Bearer has a lot of recurring treacheries. It has like encounter sets that you see almost in every 2 scenarios.
Yeah.
Dark Matter has like 2 recurring encounter sets, and there's like 3 cards each in each. It's like almost every scenario is full of encounter cards that are unique to that scenario,
Yes.
and that kind of highlights because I'm very much of a scenario designer probably. Like I'm more focused on making the scenario an interesting experience than the overall campaign mechanics. While Dr. Jack Science, you can tell that he's trying to make something interesting with the campaign and how the treacheries evolve throughout the campaign and
Yeah, definitely.
and you can see what like how you the Arkham scenarios work in Plague Bearer as well.
And
It's very much campaign focused.
yeah, and I can actually even see like with like even as you're saying like each because your mythos decks as you said like are all unique and they fit with
Yeah.
the it really feels like you're taking chunk by scenario for it. I actually also I can announce in this video that I'm doing a video of this with Dr. Jack Science as well in the future. So because I'm
Awesome.
excited to pick both your brains for your guys' things because they are very different. I think they're both great custom campaigns, but they are very different in how they were approached, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I don't think there's. Yeah, I think this scenario is just really tight. I don't really have any other questions. I think we can move on to the one I've only played the second part of the second.
Shall I
version.
only talk about the second part?
No, because I think I've looked to kind of see, so
Yeah,
I do
like
kind of
that
know
difference,
like.
yeah.
But there. So this thing I think is just. I remember my first time
agenda
through
deck.
when I
Yeah.
saw 3 Doom and I was like, what the heck? And then I saw it again and I was like, what the heck? But then like how it cycles through and like it just basically just
Messes up your plans.
and then also just like how it like it's just bad when it advances, but like it just kind of like
Yeah.
resets and keeps going. I think it's just really nice. I like that for this one.
So Lost Quantum is kind of like the one where I'm like, all right, no one understands quantum physics, so time to put as many crazy mechanics in here as possible.
Yeah.
And it'll be okay.
Yeah, because where's that one? The Hounded Tindalos?
Oh yeah, Tendalos is one of my favorites.
I was reminded of this guy because this one I haven't played since like September last year.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got there with Lyle yet. But I was looking through the FAQ before we started recording, and for the is this real? Yes, the
like
Hounded Tindalos is real. I think it's funny. I think it's fun, and it really makes it's a really fun flavor for the Hound of Tindalos.
Yeah, like extra dimensional only comes out at odd angles. How do you portray that in a card form?
Yeah.
This was my answer.
Yeah, because I even like the spawn just like at no specific location,
Yeah.
which you really like. I love it too because like it doesn't really like specify, like it doesn't really need to be specified, like it's like put into play, but just like I love like it's like even further, it's like he's just nowhere but everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It's always fun to see reactions to that.
Yeah.
It's again another one of those like twist moments where you're like, what? when you read it. I always love like adding moments in the scenario where it's like you make the players say, what?
Yeah, always good. And then so for this one, this is the one where you get cards in front of you, right? And they're
hidden face down encounter cards in your threat area.
And then we have the
kind of playing with the idea of the uncertainty principle there, where it's like you don't know what you have, but it's bad and it keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, and then like this is also like why I'm very eager to play this one first, because I know it's gonna feel very different because
yeah, definitely.
Like when you do this one last, you're living in the world that's like about to die, right? Like about to just snuff itself out. As shown by the fading on Erwin Simmons here versus the other one where he's like, I'm doing okay.
The locations keep getting shuffled back, so you're like struggling all the time.
Yeah, which I think I'm gonna definitely appreciate this scenario more when I play the alternate version, because I do enjoy it. I think it's a very fun scenario, but I don't think I'll like really appreciate the design of it until I see how it's different, right? Because like I think the second half works really well, but there's a lot of cool stuff I won't know until I play the other half.
Yeah, the two halves play with completely different mechanics, basically, right? Like the second half is like the face down cards. The first half is really much location based. So
that's cool. That's cool. So like, how did you approach the design on this one?
I definitely designed the first half of the scenario first.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess this is story based because I was thinking, what happens if you get here late? If you get here late, it means that it's too late. You can't stabilize everything, so you just have to escape with Erwin Simmons. So then I designed a like fading mechanic around how do you make escaping with him interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess this is narrative first.
Yeah, and it feels very Phantom of Truth, right? Where you get two halves of a scenario with one set, which
depending on
Yeah. So yeah, I wish I had more to ask and think about this, but I'm very excited to play it. When I do, I'm sure I'm gonna message you and be like, "Oh my god, this is so cool."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, middle three scenarios, pretty fun.
Yeah.
They all, I think. Yeah, they're all like, they all pinpoint a different sci-fi theme.
Definitely, they do. They very much do. And I think that's what makes them so...
Alien, The Thing.
Yes, yeah.
Very obvious inspirations. This is like sci-fi adventure-ish, and you know, you always have to have something named Quantum and something.
Yeah,
sci-fi.
you do. It's true.
Aliens, but like Migos.
Yeah.
Brains.
Yeah. And also, this one feels like a little bit slower, and then it turns into an action movie at the end.
Yeah.
All right, The Machine in Yellow. This one blew my mind when it first appeared, because I was like, wait a minute. Well, once they load in, everyone will see. But this is Carcosa. This is the theater. And then
This
there's
is fun to
also these
design.
cards, which are like, this would be the time when like they do come in, right? This stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this one was fun to design. It's like, what if Curtain Call was different?
Yeah. And then as well, I really like where there's the little moment where the guy shows up, and it's either Royal Emissary or Boogeyman,
Yeah.
I believe, depending on
Yeah.
your how good you did. Is that what does it? I don't even remember. It's been a while
It
since I played
depends
this.
on if you got 100% K2, which means you defeated the Boogeyman completely, you get the Boogeyman.
Yeah, he shows up again, right?
Yeah. If you don't defeat him completely, you get the Royal Emissary.
Yeah.
But the Boogeyman is probably a lot worse in this scenario.
Yeah, he's very scary in this one. Yeah.
There's nowhere to run.
Which is one of those things too where like I think it's an interesting balance too, because feasibly at this point now, because this is the map's just, spoiler alert, it's just curtain call. Like you get the lobby doorways, you get like the backstage doorways, right? Like
Yeah,
you
it's
get all
curtain
this
call.
stuff. Like it doesn't really do any of that. So it's really interesting and compelling because it kind of asks the question, do you have a good enough deck at this level as to get through a level 1 scenario before someone like the Boogeyman shows up, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're at 100%. I mean, only if you're at 100% functionality, which I think is a nice little stress knowing that going in.
It's like this timer in this scenario is so short. There's 9 doom, and then you start taking direct horror, and the Boogeyman shows up. So you
got to go quick.
you're either gonna die or you're like struggling with your other self at some point.
Yeah, and I do like how this is like a big point. Like it feels like a big memory climax in it as well. Right?
Yeah.
Where like this is like
This
the
is supposed
big
to be
moment.
it's supposed to be the memory climax of this campaign.
And I think that's another thing that's really nice with this campaign as well, is that there are like these beats where you're like, okay, this is the end of this one. And you see that also, like, why I think this campaign works so well is because you see that in the official ones too, right? Where you're like, okay, we're done with this point. This is the highlight of that. And now we go to something else for the last one. And I think that's really nice. And then, of course, this one also has your other self.
Your other self.
This guy.
Very. So this is kind of like, I'm like, I wish Carcosa kind of played with the idea that like, you might you yourself is the king in yellow in some way.
Yeah.
So, I decided to do that for real.
Yeah, no, I dig it. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like, it's spooky at first because you look at this and you're like, what? Like this happened to me even on my blind playthrough. I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do? But it really actually, like, it's when you approach it and you think about it, you can solve and beat yourself. It just takes just a little bit of thinking. You have to like actually outsmart your own investigator in a way, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's almost a puzzle scenario. Just discard.
Yeah,
Because
it really
there's just
is.
like, you need to figure out how to beat yourself, and there are a few different ways, but it's always like a tight climax because of how it has the same health as you.
Yep.
And by the time you get to this scenario, you might have taken a few damage, but you need some way to not deal the full amount of health to the enemy, because that's the same amount of health as that you have.
Yeah, and I like too that what this also does is that some investigators, that's much less of a problem. Like Tommy is like, I don't care, right? And I think that's what's really fun about this game is that it's like impossible to design a card that hurts everyone equally.
Yeah.
And like that's okay, but then like it makes it so that Tommy's okay. But now like we have a Rex, like you're like a Rex Murphy. And it's like, so what do you do, Rex? Right? Like, how do you solve this problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really promotes teamwork.
Yes, it
Because
does. Yeah.
It's like the fighter helps fight off the the, the like investigators' big enemies. Yeah, it's nice.
It is.
Oh, there's also this guy here,
Yes, the man in the pallid mask. The stranger. Yeah.
stranger. Yeah. So my idea with the other self was that I wanted it to be a struggle, so I wanted the players to have exhausted their fighting capabilities when they get there.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the stranger is like a big boss type tough enemy. So I expect players to use all their like spectral razors or their ammo on it. And then right after you defeat that, then the other self comes right out and you're like, but I just used all my guns.
Yeah.
So what do I do now?
Interesting. I
To
like
really
that.
help with that puzzle aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. I like it too that like once again how this is just Carcosa,
Yeah.
but different because this guy, the stranger in this one, when he shows up, it's like the same kind of thing. It's like the exact same like cadence too for like when he does show up, which is just
Yeah.
really neat. Yeah, I think this one's obviously I've seen a lot of people online say that this one feels like a sequel to Carcosa, and while I don't recommend that. Like, I don't think you need to like play Carcosa and then play this to appreciate it. But I think if you really like Carcosa, you'll like find a lot of things be like, oh, that's cool. Hey, look at this, it's Curtain Call.
Yeah. It's a fun moment. Again, another one of those blind hooks
Yep.
where it's like the first time you go, wait, curtain call. I was very giddy when I went to the curtain call locations and realized that none of them really break theme.
Good. That's
Like,
sick. Yeah.
It still works with this campaign, so that's good.
Nice.
Must have been one hell of an intermission.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, could be.
Yeah. No, it's a. All right. Next up, we've talked about this one a lot too, but we have the Fragment of Carcosa here. So this is the one, the other one that had a big change.
Yeah. This one had a notable agenda. There's no doom threshold.
Yeah. But it does, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does, like, yeah, it does turn into one eventually. Yeah.
So another blind thing, right? Because
Yeah.
once you know, you know.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work the next time you play, but the first time you play, you're like, wait, but we keep adding doom? Like, how long do we have?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I like it because it builds a little bit of, like, you're like, suddenly you don't trust it. You're like, no, something's up. Something's up. And I think it does really good at doing the thing that I really like about this scenario, which is, like, the feeling of dread. And this is actually, like how you were talking about earlier, like, the whole twist of this one is that you got there too late. That's kind of something that I really like about Arkham Horror's stories in general, is they always seem to be after the story takes place, right? Like, Dunwich Legacy is after the actual the Dunwich story, right?
Yeah.
And this one, it still has that vibe where you're just like a little bit late, and you're watching the results of the story as opposed to being in the story, which I really like that it carries through in this as well. So we talked a lot about this one too, but this is the one that I see it right now. Everything's flipping.
Everything's flipping.
Yeah. So
a lot of
Yeah. No.
It's like again with the teaching moments where this is the obvious teaching moment here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get through the bottomless pit? You flip. And that's the first flip everyone has to do.
Yeah.
And it teaches people how to flip, and that there are different locations on each side.
Yeah, because then it flips and it flips, because you flip your location and it flips this location too, right? Yeah. And then it becomes a spiral staircase. I love the story that these tell. Like, even if you just like if you're like playing this game and you don't get this luxury on real life, but press Alt and then press Shift to look at the card, and just like between the two, it's like poetry. It's incredible.
Gotta line them up.
Yeah.
There's a very complicated flipping puzzle. The trick I will tell everyone is just fall through the bottomless pit. Just skip that, and then you solve like most of the puzzle through taking 3 damage. It does hurt though. You might die, but
But that's the way.
But that's a speed run tactic. Yeah. Unless you have like teleports from like player cards,
Yeah.
that helps as well.
Yeah.
It's Impossible Ravine is kind of like a little like how is this possible moment.
Yes.
Can't enter it from other connecting locations. Yeah, it's and then actually solving the puzzle's a nightmare.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But it's because like the puzzle is like, but the thing is about like most of the puzzle is not for, it's just for like the super secret ending, right? Or do you actually have to solve the whole puzzle for the, because I like, once again, like I'm the last time I played this one I had Profana, so I actually don't even know the true struggle.
You have to solve it once
Yeah.
for to complete the like act. So
Find the royal princess.
you have to do either everything is cave or everything is Carcosa to get this location. Both
Right.
sides are read
Yeah.
the same story card that advances the act.
Nice. Okay.
And so this is why there's no doom. Not why there's no doom threshold, but a good reason why there's no doom threshold is that you have infinite time to solve this puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah, 19
but
is a lot of Doom, even if it takes a...
yeah, that's kind of one of my like things I dislike is that 19 Doom is too much. I think because when you flip it, you're like, oh, there was so much time left instead of like I would hope it'd be like, oh, we were so close or
yeah, I
something
get you.
like
I
that.
get you.
But
Yeah.
it's hard. It's kind of I wouldn't know how to do that. Make
Yeah,
people,
because like, and also like, as you were saying, like sometimes like you got a group that's not good at puzzles, and they might need that much time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then spending memories to flip locations is always useful.
Yes. Yeah.
What else is here? There's oh yeah, these treacheries.
Oh, these ones. All right. An investigator would be defeated by horror. Cancel that horror and add this card to the victory display. Weird. I forgot about these ones.
It's kind of me trying to make players betray each other in some way.
Yeah, and
I don't think it works in practice, but I haven't seen anyone actually defeat another investigator to get more VP.
I think what's really neat about this though is that these cards right here immediately make me feel as if this asteroid is corrupting, right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's like,
and then
it wants you to do something bad.
Yeah, because like you look at that card and you're like, oh, this isn't scary. This card basically like ultimately just reads -1 hand size, right?
Yeah.
But
and
it's
VP.
It has VP and it's also like a what if.
It's like tempts you.
Yeah.
What if I can destroy it? Like, what if I fight this enemy but don't commit anything so I miss and.
It also kind of seems fun because if suddenly it could have this thing where someone like tries to fall in the bottomless pit.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun. That's very neat. And then this one also has my favorite enemies that I've ever seen, which are the curtains.
Yeah. Sorry.
I love the curtains.
Yeah.
And like I just like because the first time through these enemies were still just like the flavor for it, right? Like you're doing the obstacles.
They're the same. Yeah.
But I love the stories that they tell and like I think it's really cool and I love the curtain. It just like tangles you up. It's so different, which is like why I really like have like this one sticks with me is because it feels so different than any other thing in the campaign.
Yeah, there's no enemies.
No enemies.
That was like just very abstract things attacking you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then in this scenario, there's the secret, which, not like I've had a few people noticed the secret on their blind playthrough, which is really exciting. But I think most people will miss it. But so the secret basically being that how these two locations will read the same story card.
Yeah.
So when you do it and you advance the act, you think that you don't need to do the other locations anymore.
Yeah.
But you can actually read that story card twice, because if you read carefully in the one that advances the act, if this is the first time you read this text. But regardless if it's the first time you read this, you advance the act.
Yeah, I remember that. That was
It's like a.
Because I remember that happened with you might have been in my chat when it happened, but I remember being like, "What do I do?" And then I think you gave me a hint. Someone gave me a hint towards it, because I remember that I was about to ask, like, isn't there the thing where you can like kind of just there's a way to get through it like that? Yeah.
Yeah, because you played the previous version, which also had like the secret in a different way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really cool, because it's kind of like it's a little like a little like, a little sly and a little metagamey, but I feel like it fits with, like, Carcosa in itself is a little bit metagamey, right? Like, yeah.
So one design thing about this is in an old version, I had written on the final act that as a hint, there may be another way.
Yeah.
But that was a mistake, because that basically made everyone stop their game and try to figure out the other way. Yeah, or like they would like try to find something and couldn't find it and think it's broken. Like, I don't see any other way, so I don't understand what this text is saying.
That honestly sounds like something that I might have exactly said.
Maybe, yeah. But not putting it there and making it like kind of hidden makes it so it's you don't get that moment where then it's very much purely I'll do this on the second playthrough.
Yeah, which is really cool. And I think what it does too, I feel like, as you were saying, I think the blind playthrough, getting the secret ending is really tough, but it gives something to do on the not blind playthrough.
Yeah. I like actively don't want people to get the secret ending on the blind playthrough.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that's good. Because it is a very different ending.
Yeah. And the original ending is the best ending.
Yeah, it's really nice. All right. Let's go to the final one here, Starfall. The one that my first time through took me 2 hours, and I loved every minute of it. It's a big scenario.
Yeah.
And
if I had to change the campaign guide, I would add like a warning that it's long.
Yeah.
Because now I have to like personally tell people every time they play Dark Matter, make sure you schedule for the last scenario. It's double the length of every other scenario.
Yeah, that's what I told Lyle too. I'm like, just so you know, we're gonna need some extra time for that one.
Yeah.
But like, I think it helps the scope. It makes it feel epic, and makes it fun, right?
Yeah, it's a big scenario.
Yeah.
And it is big, so it has to be.
So yeah, how this one works, it has like you're gonna move this to attach to any location, and and investigators at any location may activate this ability, and then you can move from it as a lightning bolt. It's like, was this before Innsmouth?
Yep, this was before vehicles.
Yeah, and it's like a I don't want to say good version of it, but like it doesn't feel bad, if that's a better way of putting it, because it just it feels so easy, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to limit players in how they moved around so too much.
Oh, and I love too, with that in mind, how, like, getting kind of ahead of ourselves here, but there is a second ship you can find, right?
Oh yeah, it's in the set aside.
Nice.
I got it. It's called the Casilda, which, thinking about it, is a bad name because it gets confused for Tasilda all the time.
I get it though. I understand it, but I like
ship.
this, because then it can, like, people can go on their own, right?
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed this one also with the Profana, because I just made this my locus and just was like, all right, back to the ship.
Oh, that's really good.
Zip our way back, but This scenario has so much going for it in this scanning deck, and I just want to talk about first the Earth, and then also I believe isn't the sun on the back? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, these two first things here are, I think, like in like the not blind playthrough before the final boss, these are like the last two big twists where it's like, what? Like, what the heck?
So it's like throughout the campaign, I've been teaching players that like something that may look impossible could have another way through.
Yes, yeah.
And so these two are the last two puzzles and twists where it's like you read it, what?
Yeah.
I think most people just laugh though. It's pretty
I think
funny.
so too. And like, cause like as I was saying, I love that this is like the payoff to the Earth story, right? And this
Yeah.
one obviously has the storyline situations, which I've had a lot of people, even like the viewers, have even brought it up, and I think it's really cool too. Like the general concept of like the Doom in this one is like kind of just the general concept of entropy, right? Like that it all just is gonna die, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is just really cool, and also really the idea of what cosmic dread is, which I think is really nice.
Yeah. And it harkens back to like old sci-fi, like
Yeah.
Asimov's the Last Question is all about entropy and like the inevitability of it, which fits very well with the Haster theme.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Chaos and entropy. But it's very sci-fi too. So
Yes, yeah.
it's like of course, Haster is a sci-fi term at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, so then like the deck that like the scanning deck gives you some enemies, it gives you more locations, it has a giant crab, which is always a good time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Love the giant crab art.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And then it has like the things that help you solve your puzzles, right?
Yep.
Which is like this guy, which allows you to actually, that's the one that lets you do it, right? Because you're connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can park on the sun and then scan with
Yeah,
the
that's how it works. Yeah, yeah.
dog.
But
There's
what
also
I really liked about this one was there was all these story objectives that came in, and I also I thought it was really nice too, where basically that it's not too complicated for the setup for it, but if you helped them and you got like the good thing, you basically just skip the first part of that objective,
Yeah.
which is nice
It's
and
like-
clean. Yeah,
It's like
nothing
a
too complicated.
double side objectives. I like the idea of like, ooh, you have a bunch of side quests to do in space. It's kind of like Threads of Fate in a way,
Yep, yeah, definitely.
with the 3 act decks. Yeah.
And I also just love how this map starts and how it ends. It tells such a story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like at first you're a stranger to this new world, and then you discover and meet people everywhere.
And I think also going back to what you were saying, it really then it ups the stakes so much more now that you have these three in the middle, right? That goes in,
Yeah.
and that's so I'm so that's also partly the reason why I'm happy I asked you to do this and why you said yes, because that's so cool to learn and it makes so much more sense knowing that.
I love the act deck of this scenario, which is there's only one.
Yep.
That was like kind of like just something fun that I wanted to be there. There's like, how can a final scenario only have one act?
And I think that's it's really that is really neat because you don't expect that from the final one, but it's kind of cool because you had like the what if don't want to fight, what if we don't fight an ancient one in a extra dimensional space, what if
And
there's
then
only
it's
one?
just-
Yeah.
And the objective is just to resign.
Yeah.
If each undefeated investigator has resigned, you may advance. A fun time.
Yeah. Sick. Anything else about this one? I think this one's just really good, and I'm very excited to play it with Lyle for the first time. But
I don't know. It's just pretty standard Arkham. It does come back to like the original promise of Scan, which is like, yeah, it's like scanning in general. You have like basic exploration of scan,
Yeah.
explore unique mechanics relating to scan,
Yeah.
and then like there's like a lull where there's no scanning, but then Starfall finally brings back scan in its original glory,
Yes. Yeah.
in the sense of you could scan anything and it's really truly exploration at
Which
its core.
I think is also kind of neat too, because it feels you don't feel like you actually like there's enough scan. You don't feel like you ever get tired of it, and I think it's just the perfect amount. You don't miss it, and you don't get tired of it, and it changes until then, as you said. Like even though it's like pretty much the exact same as Tatterdemalion, it
Yeah.
feels so different because
it's
just
a lot bigger.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
A lot more locations as well in the scanning deck.
Yes. Yeah, when you see the giant scanning deck, you're like, let's go. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
And then there's I did I did the Tasilda one once. It is very scary, which I think is really good, and I think it is a good, as you said, like secret ending for your second time through.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly because, as you've said, like after you've played Starfall the first time, the second time you kind of know where everything is. So
Yeah. You just kind of
the sense of exploration is gone.
yes, yeah. Which is
you've
like
already
unfortunately like unavoidable with something like this. Because like
Yeah.
it's built around the exploration. You can't really like create that feeling again.
No.
Without,
Unless
like-
there's like a completely separate scanning deck that you shuffle or something.
Yeah, and like even then, like if you do that, it like ruins the feeling of the first one too, right? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
just awesome. So I have just a closing question, kind of. Actually, no, I probably have a few. So the first one is,
No worries.
what's your biggest advice to someone who is looking to design a scenario or, in the big scope, a campaign?
Well, I would suggest you start small.
Yeah.
Start small, just so you understand how big of a scope making a scenario really is.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much going on behind finding the art, playtesting, and publishing it, exporting it, making the print and play files.
Yep.
It's really crazy the amount of time it takes. So making something smaller as your first project will help you be able to manage the commitment needed to make something larger later.
Nice. Nice.
And even if you're planning to make something big like a campaign, you could start small as well, like I did with Dark Matter, where there's at first it was only a 3-part campaign, right?
Yeah.
You could easily try to make the first 2 scenarios as like a small section of a larger thing and see if that works out. But yeah, so
Yeah.
start small, I would suggest.
I think that works well with something that I've even told people in my Discord that
Yeah.
when you're designing, like you see even now with Edge of the Earth, the number changes. The only reason that they had 8 scenarios was because that's what Lord of the Rings did before it, and it was the release style they had, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I'm sure there are now, even in Fantasy Flight, there's probably campaigns they look back at and be like, I wish this was a 6 scenario campaign, right? Because you might get filler, and you will, starting small, and just like if you have an idea that's 6 scenarios, go for it. Don't add 2 just because 8's the number they used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you designing anything else, like another scenario of anything you're working on, even if it's just even a yes or no? I don't need any juicy details.
So if you read in the designer notes, it says that I'm working on Dark Ages, which in a similar theme to Dark Matter brings the investigators back into the Dark Ages.
Nice.
As obviously entitled. But it would act in the sense that Dark Matter is a sequel to Carcosa, Dark Ages is a prequel to Carcosa.
Oh, so it's still a little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shares a lot of DNA with each other, so it would be like then you'd play the 3 to complete the trilogy, in a sense.
Nice.
But that's on pause right now
Yeah.
because I kind of want to see. One big aspect of Dark Ages was gonna be that it takes the open world of like the three scenarios of Dark Matter to like the next level, in the sense that the entire map is an open world.
Ooh.
Like you can play it almost every scenario in any order and have like scenarios that pop in and out depending on like the weather, stuff like that.
Interesting.
I've decided to wait a bit and see how FFG does this.
Yeah, get
like,
some. Yeah.
Because of the new format, I'm sure they're gonna come up with some cool ideas first.
Definitely.
So I'm kind of like waiting for the campaign dust to settle first.
For sure. Cool. That's cool.
Trying to do that. So the next Arkham content from me is probably gonna be Return to Dark Matter.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
The timeline seems to be that Return 2's come about 2 years after the original.
Okay.
Dark Matter came out almost a year ago, so I have a year to design Return to Dark Matter.
Well, that's exciting. I will definitely play the heck out of it. But I mean, also like I know Dark Matter is gonna be just in my rotation for as long as I'm playing Arkham. I really enjoy it. So thank you so much for taking the hours and hours and hours, and then also all of the just even like the putting it out there, because like that's hard for people too, right? Like putting it out there, and then like also having like people like me, a content creator who's in the moment, my Italian side comes out and I just start yelling about rats with Surge.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's...
no worries.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think that's an important tip for newcomers as well, is to, I guess, learn how to take criticism and be able to criticize your own work.
Yeah.
In a sense, that's always important as a creator, to be able to listen to other people.
Definitely. I think that's a good place to end this. I want to thank you so much again for doing this. This was a really fun conversation, and
That's great.
Yeah. I'm going to just say goodbye to everyone who's watching. Thank you so much for everyone who watched this video. If you want to see more of this or anything like that, let me know in the comments, as always. And huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.